Hello, welcome to Keeping Curious. This is a podcast style sit down chat video because I wanted to talk about creativity and inspiration, specifically when it comes to writing. I wanted to share some random things that I find gives me inspiration or makes me think differently when it comes to being creative. I feel like I find so much tidbits of information and spouts of knowledge and random things. And I feel like those things kind of make up me as a creative person in some way or another. So I started keeping track of what I've been searching up. I call it my Wikipedia warrior hour, where I literally am on Wikipedia and I'm going down a rabbit hole. Honestly, embracing the curiosity rabbit hole, hence why I'm calling this Keeping Curious. And I'm aware that my mic stand is the CN Tower. Okay, she's just gonna be with us today. So sit back, relax, grab some tea, and we're gonna chat about literally the most random things that might give you inspiration to write. So in my last writing video, I think it was, I was about to mention that I was reminded of an analogy that the author Wolfe made in an interview that I found on YouTube. And I didn't share the analogy because I wanted to save it for this podcast. I feel like it'd be wrong if I didn't say it first on this podcast. He was asked a question along the lines of the differentiation between science fiction and fantasy. And Wolfe has said multiple times that he feels like he writes science fantasy. And I feel like it's so interesting, the two genres and differentiating them. I was at an author event here in the city, and the interviewer kind of asked this question of, people will say fantasy is looking into the past and sci-fi is that future. And honestly, I feel like it's a concept that most people nowadays don't really subscribe to. Yes, fantasy and medieval worlds hits in a way, and science fiction is always rooted in the future. I want to leave you with an analogy that he made in this YouTube video I found. He gives a longer answer, which I'll dive into, but then he kind of follows up with this analogy that really stuck with me. When asked a similar question, Wolfe says, "If you don't think you know how a radio works, because most people don't know how a radio works, they only think they know how a radio works because the radio has always been there. But if you don't even think you know, then the radio becomes a magical instrument. These voices speak to you from a box. That's a fantasy device. If you're enough of a radio hobbyist that you could buy a kit and put the thing together, then it's science fiction." And that hit me because everything becomes perspective and the lens that you see it through. And I always say, whenever I recommend his Book of the New Sun, I say that it's science fiction told through a fantasy lens, because it's the way the information is relayed to you. I'll go deeper into what he says. He goes deeper into what he was saying, and he says, "Science fiction is always to some degree fantasy. If you say I'm going to extrapolate what the science of the next 50 years will be like, that in itself is fantasy. If you pretend that you think that your extrapolation is going to be 100% accurate, it never is. It may score some outstanding hit, and then you fade off into unicorns and elves. But unicorns, I think, are science fiction if you put them in our world, rather than if you put them in a world of medieval tapestry." And so you see, we can argue about that indefinitely. If somebody in 1800 wrote a book about a robot, a mechanical man, and there were books written that were generally clockwork, then to someone who never thought such things would exist, that was fantasy. To us looking back at the mechanical man, we see that mobile robots can be made. Then it's science fiction. Why should the passage of 100 or 200 years make the book change its genre? It depends on the preconceptions we bring to the book. I feel like this speaks to framing and how important framing could be as a writer or as a reader when you're reading a science fiction or fantasy book. I feel like random things can be placed in our world and they become something entirely different to us. I feel like it's food for thought about how the ways you could really frame writing and give perspective to things, what we assume can really be played upon when it comes to writing. Because many times the way things are described in Book of the New Sun, you don't know if it's a thing of fantasy or if it's somehow connected to real life. And the melding of things that feel more fantastical and fantasy to us and things that feel science fiction and somewhat close to our time merge in this book. And it's an entirely created and curated world that somehow just feels like it's meant to be. You don't know what time period you're really in the book. You know you're thousands of years in the future, but you don't know what from our past has carried in to the book. I feel like there's a whole other way that writers and creatives bring this idea into their science fiction stories of what is from our world and what isn't, and how did it get there. And I feel like this is what makes these books timeless. When you meld such ideas together, the character Severian sees electricity. He describes it as blue lightning. I remember that vividly from like the very beginning of the book. Or buttons and machines, when that would be like a control panel to us, or some sort of like device, you know, we can understand that better because we're closer to that. But the character's perspective isn't. That's why electricity becomes blue lightning to them. But where it gets deeper into sci-fi, I feel like, is how these things get into our world. Like, for example, in Annihilation, if you watch the movie, you'll know what I'm talking about. I'm only going off the movie when I ever reference Annihilation. I never read the book, but there's this creature in both the movie and the book that it torments the characters. At some point in the movie, one of the characters gets eaten by this bear-like being. It has like a skull for a face, but it has like a weird bearish body, and they don't see her for a while. And then at night, they think that they're hearing the voice of the girl that they were with, but it wasn't. It was the animal. I want to call it the Alzabo, but we're not there yet. This creature mimicked the voice of whoever it ate. And so that was its call, or its way of luring others to it. And it's like, how did we get here in science fiction? How would this work, this creature? How would this being be a thing? Like, that's not even a work of science fiction to us. That becomes fantasy. We know bears exist. We know that animals can mimic our calls. It's just putting those things together and then using it as something of nightmares. After me and my boyfriend watched the movie, we were like, okay, did they get this from Book of the New Sun? Because there's this thing called the Alzabo in Book of the New Sun that does the exact same thing, but it eats like the brain. This is so graphic. It eats the brain of the person that it kills. I'm pretty sure like when it ingests it, it then can mimic it and speak like it. There's also this concept in Full Metal Alchemist. If you watch Full Metal Alchemist, you know it, where, oh my God, what was her name? Oh, that one was so heartbreaking. It was the little girl that got like melded together with the dog, and like the voice was so eerie. I remember hearing it. I was like, oh, like it's human, but it's not, you know, like there's a human in there, but it's not. I feel like those creatures, those things that are so close to us, but they're not, and they know what we'd respond to. They know that we respond to humans, right? It plays on our empathy. I think that type of creature is like crazy. Anyway, in Book of the New Sun, it like eats the head of the person and it consumes it, and then it uses it to speak like it. It goes into this whole thing of memory and being able to consume people's memory and what that means. But I'm not going to get there yet, guys. Somehow I'm able to connect these things that I'm talking about. I promise you it won't stay connected for long. So how things like this get into a world in science fiction. Black holes. Okay, you're like, wait, what? Okay, I started diving into this black hole rabbit hole because they mention in Annihilation that do they call it the shimmer? I think they go into like the shimmer or whatever. This mutated area of Earth almost acts like refractions. They say it's like refractions, and I think like reflections of things, like a literal tattoo reflected on the character's hand from another person to another person. And I was like, it's mirror-like almost. And then it made me think of Book of the New Sun. There's this idea of a hall of mirrors and teleportation and time travel and mirrors. And I'm like, what is the connection here between this and this science fiction? And then I opened the book of the Lexicon Earthis because I was going in a rabbit hole. And I pause here to say, when you feel yourself going to a rabbit hole and you're connecting some neural pathways, keep it going. Don't stop and just connect something. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't actually connect, but maybe it means something to you. Maybe it fuels something in you. So then I opened up the book and I found kind of the diagram of how the black hole system works. I didn't read it because I didn't want to spoil everything for me, because there's still more books that I want to read in the series, and I'm not done. So I just looked at the kind of diagram they have for the black hole. Somehow it works where a black hole connects into this middle ground where things start acting like a mirror. And in like actual science, I searched it up and I was like, okay, is there like some mirror thing going on with black holes? But really, it's light wrapping around you. So like if you fell to like the event horizon of a black hole, like you'd be able to see like the back of your own head, theoretically. I don't know if it's theoretically or it's actually in theory. I don't know. But that light wrapping around you is not a mirror. It's not a reflection, but it's some distortion that acts like a mirror almost. Here they have it as a mirror, I guess, but then that then reflects to the other side of what the other side of a black hole would be, and that would be a white hole. Now, white holes I don't think are like actual like known fact. Like we haven't seen a white hole IRL, but it's a theory that they're there on the other side of a black hole because a black hole is like intaking matter. There must be something expelling the matter continuously. Guys, I don't know. I'm not. I promise you, this is the most my adult brain could understand. If the white hole is constantly expelling in science fiction, what ends up, right? What ends up? What is expelling what matter? There's so much playroom area there as a writer, as an artist, you know? So I'm not sure, but I think in Book the New Sun, somehow things get into that world through this sort of black hole, white hole, matter sucking in world, and weird things being expelled and somehow end up in another world. I don't know, but it's cool. And I think that that holds together a lot of like science fiction concepts more than I realized. And then I started thinking about another book I picked up called Light, because everything is about light, right? Light is wrapping in these black holes. If there was no light, what would we even know if there was no light, right? So Light, this book by M. John Harrison, explores what if there was no event horizon in the black hole. So that mirror-like thing, what happens if it's flat, right? Like, not flat, but what happens if there's no event horizon? In the book, there's like this thing called like the beach. And on the beach, everything washes up. Weird artifacts from different worlds are there. I haven't finished the book, so I hope I'm explaining this okay. But out of time artifacts can arrive there, you know, because there's no event horizon. It becomes a singularity is what it's called, apparently. I don't know if I'm explaining this right. So I think that the playroom of this with science fiction is so cool. What artifacts from what planet, from what solar system got here or went into some black hole that then smushed itself or didn't smush itself, or it's a white hole that's expelling all these artifacts? How did they end up here? What do they mean to us? Are they alien to us? Do they connect to us somehow? You know, it's like, what if aliens find the Voyager? You know, what would they think of that? What would we think of an alien artifact? Oh, I find it so interesting. It gives me ideas start surfacing in my mind, you know, like the artifacts on the beach. It was compelling. I thought it was compelling. That's where my train of thought ended. I kind of was like, that's what Light does, the book. Also, switching gears. There are going to be a lot of random switching gears here, but I think I seen on TikTok someone talking about this book called Gormenghast, which I've been reading. I'm like a quarter through it. It's a story told in such an interesting way, and I thought I'd share. And I think they made this connection. I don't know if I don't think I made this up in my head. I think I seen it on TikTok. And someone connected Gormenghast and how it is told to Garden of Earthly Delights by Bosch. If you've never seen this painting, I'll put it on the screen here. It is just, there's a lot going on. There's a lot happening. A lot of people are doing a lot of things. And I think it's definitely connected to Christianity and the different, like, I think the end might be hell or some idea of it. It's so eerie. It's so interesting. But I think that the connection of Gormenghast to Garden of Earthly Delights is the way the story is told. The setting is this castle. There's a plot going on between within the characters in the castle, but the castle is like the life driving energy of this book. It becomes a character. And the outside world, I don't know about the outside world or what's going on in the outside world. All I know is all these little paintings that you can zoom in to what this person's doing in this top right corner of the castle and what's going through their mind and what's happening there. And then what's happening at the bottom of the castle or in the kitchens and what are the people doing in there. It becomes a way of piecing together a story through a specific area. This castle is huge, and it is its own character in a way of undiscovered areas and all too common areas. Who resides in this area and why and what are they doing there specifically? You know, there's one guy that is just dusting sculptures at the very top, and that's his job. And all he knows is that, and he likes his life and what he's doing there. He doesn't know really why, but he knows that that's what he's meant to do. It's so interesting. I feel like it makes you zoom out and think about every person's experience in the painting that is this castle, you know, for example. And I think that Garden of Earthly Delights kind of does that too, where you can look on this painting and be like, what is going on here? What are they doing here? What's the story? And maybe they're meant to always be doing that. Maybe they've been doing that for a long time, or maybe they just started doing that. Maybe they moved from one area to the next. I don't know. But I think that's what makes it so compelling, guys. And I feel like that's some cool inspiration to bring into your book. I don't know. I think what connects this to what I was talking about before is really playing with the setting of something and the time of it. I don't know. Okay, switching gears, guys. I've been thinking about writing like a cyberpunk novel, and it really stemmed from my love of music. And I was kind of thinking about the feeling that I feel when I'm at a rave or when I'm at, you know, a punk show and I'm surrounded by community, and how more specifically at raves, like dancing, and I'm completely out of my head, and then in my body I just am expression. And I thought of this as like the feeling of that. Like it's almost a spiritual experience. I don't know if you really connect with music or moving and dancing. There's some sort of spiritual aspect to it. At least for me, I definitely feel like going to a rave where it's like the right community and the right sounds. It locks something into place at some point, and I'm like, I can completely let go. And anyway, I was thinking about that feeling and what it would be like writing a book with that feeling embodied in a time where escape and music is so needed. Oh, now ideas are even just blooming to me about the book. But I was thinking about this cyberpunk-esque novel. I always wanted that, and the feeling of that feeling I feel with music, that euphoria, as well as connecting some sort of typical cyberpunk elements, you know. It's very much still up in the air, but that was just one element I really wanted to express in the book. And it made me kind of go into rave culture and history and that music in general, because I connect so deeply to it, because I went back to really listen to the beginnings of like house music, and I grew up listening to that. My parents would play it a lot. So really the conception of house music and like acid and jungle and things like that. There was this kind of more corporatized event happening in the city, kind of like a music festival situation. Multiple acts were going on. There was like VIP. There was tiers to like buying this thing, and it operated more like a music festival, right? And then there was also this other event that happened that was like an early morning music jam, kind of coffee jam, like get your coffee and dance to music before you start your day sort of thing that people had fun at, which is great. And then someone called these things like an underground rave, or one of them, they called one of these parties happening an underground rave, someone online. And I was like, hold on now. Hold on a second. Underground rave. Oh, okay. And then this video popped up on my Instagram of simulated rave culture. The person who made it, this is their @ I'll put it on the screen, and I'm going to read their caption because I feel like it started a very interesting conversation. It says, Most raves today aren't raves at all. They're corporate simulations of what raves used to be. We're losing the ability to recognize authentic rave culture when we see it. The underground is still there, but it's being overshadowed by its own corporate simulation. So I'm asking you, when was the last time you experienced something real? Not produced, not packaged, not designed for your Instagram story, because until we can tell the difference between authentic culture and its simulation, we're going to keep losing what made this scene special in the first place. Have you ever been to a real underground event? Tell me in the comments what made it different from the festivals everyone talks about. Found this video so compelling by, his name's Arnie.wave. And I've been to community-centered events. And I've been to like highly corporatized events like Veld. While everyone is enjoying themselves and loving the music, and I'm happy that just people have a place to be, to enjoy things together, I find beauty in that regardless. I found myself thinking, when I do write this cyberpunk novel and I'm depicting an underground scene, what makes it authentic? What makes it actually feel underground and connected? And I truly think it's community. The community, and secondly, the space. We'll get into the space in a second. Maybe I don't talk to anyone at a community-led event. Maybe I do. But I think the ideas are the same of the people there. And I think we all have shared values, even at like a punk event. You know what the shared values are there, and what people believe in. And you believe in that too. So it becomes something so authentic to you that you don't have to feel like you're in a room with people that aren't like-minded. There may be a few, at least what these places are built upon is still its main element, And an organizer that I follow, that I go to a lot of their events and raves, and I feel like they are one of those really good, authentic organizers for events and things like that. They were saying that it's harder for them to find spaces to host these raves at. And it just broke my heart, because these spaces, I feel like, were so few and far between since this started, like now and before, people were just raving at places like warehouses where it operated maybe as something during the day and it became something completely different at night, or open spaces and abandoned warehouses even. Before I get into the spaces of it, I do want to note that like rave culture, it really was a space for queer people of color, queer people or people of color. It's where everyone could unite and not have to feel any fear about being in a space. It was a space for the people who white straight society deemed uncomfortable to be comfortable. It was a space where people could actually just truly be free. And I think love in all forms comes from there, comes from raves and community. People have community obviously in different ways, whatever it may be. And I think the corporatized events, if you go to a club or, a very big music festival, it becomes like a super social media thing, which cool, like enjoy posts on your social media, or it becomes just something so expensive, like where it's like, if you don't make a lot of money or you can't afford this, you're not welcome in the space. And that cuts off so many people, so much people. And I get, you need money to run huge events like that. But I wish there was more community-led things. And a lot of the community-led things are very affordable or even free. I don't know. I really appreciate the people that put those community-led events together. And if you are giving money, you're supporting directly them, the people organizing or the bands performing. So I don't know. Maybe this is a sign for you to go and support like your local bands or DJs and communities and art. Anyway, on to these spaces of where raves are held. I was watching a video by Dami Lee. Her videos are insanely good. Her production is insane. Like, it feels like a Netflix show. Like, her production's insane. Anyway, she makes great videos. But I was watching her video called Cyberpunk Cities, Fiction or Reality. And in it, she starts to kind of break down brutalism. A lot of times you think of brutalism and it feels cold, it feels distant, it feels hollow. She says, like, she connects it to the idea that what makes these places beautiful, bright, colorful is the people occupying it. And it just rang true for me when it comes to raves. You're in a giant warehouse, blank walls, like concrete floor, whatever it is. and just some sound systems. But the people in it is what creates the beauty of the space. And I felt like I never appreciated that. And I felt like that's something also authentic that I had to keep in mind if I'm going to write a book, with these spaces being a part of the book. Yeah, brutalism, giant warehouses seem like they're just a vessel for the people that occupy them. And the people that occupy them bring the life to a space, you know? I feel like a lot of the older rave songs or house songs, you could tell that it was about community because of what they said. Literally the lyrics, just bringing people together, no matter their skin color, who they are. Like, it just felt like sometimes I wish we had a little bit more of that in our music, a little more of a call out. That being said, if you enjoy a super produced like music festival, I think they're cool too. I go too. No hate, you know, but maybe look into something more community led. I just think when we write sci-fi, science fiction, fantasy, whatever it may be, you have to keep a human pulse on that. There has to be a human aspect to that that will connect with the readers in any way. It could be any concept, philosophy explored. I think that there is a heart that beats there, that you can hear its call when you read something that really resonates with you. I don't know. I think that the humanness is something that connects us with a story in one way or another. And it depends how you pull that element into your writing. But to kind of close off my podcast, I want to do this thing called the Kindle Word Game, okay? Where I literally go on my Kindle Word library, which has, I'm going to check how many words I have on my Kindle. I have an insane amount of words on here. I think I have almost 700 in my vocabulary builder. So I'm going to press flashcards and it's going to give me a word and we're going to have to guess what that word means. Okay, so the word is stalacities. Oh my God, how do I even break this down? Stalacities. It comes from Gormenghast. And here is our context for it. So I think it's talking about something circled twice around the room, steering during his second circuit through the stalacities of shining wax and landed on something. Circle twice around the room, steering during his second circuit through the stalacities of shining wax and landed on something. All right, I'm ready to see. Okay, let's guess what this means before we see the definition. Maybe it's a state, like almost like what wax is like. Maybe it's connected to wax. Like, I'm going to assume like maybe the weird stickiness of wax. It'd be the stalacities of it. It becomes some sort of texture. But what would that be shortened? Maybe it's like when the wax like breaks. I think it's connected to wax. That's all I got, guys. Let's see the definition. Oh, a tapering structure hanging like an icicle from a roof of a cave, formed from calcium salt deposits by dripping water. Oh, stalagmite. I know that word. Does that count? I know what that word is. So I just didn't connect that it was used that way. Stalactite. Oh, stalactite. Am I stupid for not knowing this? It's like an icicle that hangs from the roof of a cave. It's formed of calcium salts deposited by dripping water. So like those things that hang down in caves, like, you know, stalactite. Stalacticy. I still can't say that word. So now we know what stalagmite is. Thank you. Okay, I think this one's a good one. Here's the word. Piquant. I'm so sorry if I'm saying this wrong and I'm really off. This comes from Sword and Citadel book, The New Sun. It says her face was piquant. Her face was piquant and even a trifle sharp. What can that mean? So it's describing her face and even a trifle sharp. So I'm going to say it's maybe almost opposite of sharp. I'm going to say it means rounded, maybe rounded or plump, he's describing a face. That's what my guess is. What is your guess, guys? Are you ready? So there's the adjective version of it, and then there's the special use that it says on the dictionary. I think it's the second. It says pleasantly stimulating or excited to the mind. Oh, that was piquant. Is it piquant? I think it's piquant. I think that makes sense. Piquant. Having a pleasantly sharp taste or appetizing flavor, or pleasantly stimulated or exciting to the mind. So I could say that this tea was piquant. I'm not even going to try anymore, guys. That's a good one, though. Okay, we'll do one more. Okay, the next word is alcod. All called. This is the word, okay? How do we say this? I can't tell you. All called. Here's the context of it. It comes from Book of the New Sun. It says, the woman Morwenna was coming up the steps, preceded by the all-cod and followed by a man with an iron spit who used it to prod her. So she was preceded by the all-cod and followed by a man. Is this some sort of title, maybe? I'm going to assume it's some sort of title. I think it's a person. It's a type of person, but what do they do? Maybe it's a religious thing. Maybe it's a religious connection person thing. Like someone is an all-cod. I feel like it might be connected religiously. I'm trying to use the context of the book, obviously, I guess. I don't know. Let's see what we think. Let's see what it really is. What's the definition? A magistrate or a mayor in Spanish, Portuguese, or Latin American towns. So it comes from there. Its origin is the mid-16th century. It comes from the word alcalde, the judge. That seems so interesting. So it's alcalde. So it's a magistrate or a mayor in a town. The magistrate. How interesting. Maybe we'll do three so I can preserve the words. If I have a lot of episodes of these, we'll stick to 3. Anyway, this was my first time doing this type of style of video, podcast style. And I was obsessed with how this was going to turn out and how perfect this was going to be. But I have to release perfection and know that something doesn't have to be perfect when you start it. It just has to get out there. And I really enjoy doing these sit down talking videos. I feel like I can share all these thoughts I have in this brain of mine that, like, I don't know who else would listen to this, okay? But you guys, I hope, like, my goal is to just spark some sort of, like, inspiration, or maybe I'd spark you guys to go down a rabbit hole of some of the topics I talked about. I have so much more to talk about that I just have in a list that just goes on of random things that I haven't touched on this episode yet. But please let me know if you enjoy this style of content. I'm a little nervous to post it. I never made content like this, but I really, really enjoy doing a podcast style video and hopefully inspiring you guys to be creative. Whether it's your next painting, you want it to be inspired by some sort of brutalist rave space, or you want to write something about Event Horizon doing something weird and artifacts. I don't know. I hope it sparks some sort of creativity or inspiration for you. And that's my goal with this. So please let me know if you enjoyed the podcast, and let me know if you knew the words in the Kindle game. If you knew all the words in the Kindle game, how do you know these words? And how do I learn more words? I want to expand my vocabulary and sound more eloquent, but I don't know how to do that. But have I really tried hard enough? Probably not, right? If you have words, maybe if you want to submit words, we can. I think once we run out of my Kindle words, submissions will come in. I'm getting ahead of myself. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, especially if you watch to the end. These are longer. I hope to try and get them to be longer and longer as time goes on. Please give it a thumbs up, subscribe. I make all sorts of content, writing, cozy content, book content, hobby content, things like that. And I'll see you in the next one.